but the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men like that because you want to know what they have to say.
Stop. Good day, good day, good day indeed. To our lovely listeners, old, new, and those who have yet to see our content. Welcome to HBR News number 145. Censorship is discussion, the law is misogyny, and other absurdities, or absurdities, depending on where you are. I am back, my dudes, with the polecats, those critters that ferret out the best feels, funnies, and what the fucks to discuss Slam Bam Badger style. Before we get into the main event, let us get into the spaghetti of the week. This is Allison. That's how I should do it.
Somebody touch my spaghetti!
I had to. Okay, so what is the weekly news roundup? First, before I get into it, guys, let me know if I sound okay. And those of you guys who are in the chat with me, if there's anything that gets weird, feel free to speak up. So, first, what everyone is wondering. Is sex with robots ethical? Yes, I know. This is something that was bothering me too. Wired.com tackles the question, examining how robotic autonomous agents cannot consent. A solution to this toxic element may be in not making the robots look like humans, which the author points out, quote, seems likely that billions of other women have already figured this out, end quote. Checkmate, you sexbot moral inferiors. OneAngryGamer.net connects a recent article on Kotaku, hinting that BioWare's developers are feeling less confident about the success of their Destiny 2 style clone, which is named Anthem, by the way, with Anita Sarkeesian's visit to their Edmonton office in January. Many gamers worry a collaboration between Sarkeesian and BioWare will lead to another shit game like Mass Effect Andromeda, hint it will, where socio-political propaganda trumps making a good game. Next, in the latest in women worsting, which is a story that will likely never ever end, there will soon be snacks for her. PepsiCo is developing chips that correlate with female-specific snacking habits. They'll be less messy and less loudly crunchy. I suppose we'll have to wait and see if the market deems the idea necessary. One change, however, that does not need public input is the changing of the Canadian anthem for a more gender-neutral language. Canadian Parliament passed a bill Wednesday that would alter the national anthem, replacing, quote, in all thy sons command, end quote, with quote, in all of us command, end quote, which sounds fucking awful. Gender neutrality is important to Justin Trudeau. So in January, he told the World Economic Forum that leaders need to put women first in hiring, promoting, and retaining more whammons. By the way, there was a little bit of a news update to the Dorito story. Turns out that it's is likely a fake story. Comic book YouTuber and social justice pariah, Diversity in Comics, has made a video where he contemplates what amounts to the Comicsgate equivalent to the Crash Override Network, complete with whisper campaigns, rumor spreading, and cronyism. If you want to learn more, I would suggest going to Diversity in Comics' YouTube channel and watching his video called, I think it's the Comics Deep State is Real or something like that. If you haven't yet read or watched the Mike.com article or video that skewers both Jordan Peterson and lobsters, yes, this is real, you should, for a laugh. Calling Peterson the far-right's philosopher superstar, Mike ridicules Peterson's belief that white privilege does not exist, that he cares about men, the monster, And best of all, claims that his new book, 12 Rules for Life, contains, quote, a lot of stuff about how to get girls, end quote. Just terrible, bestial stuff. My favorite quote from the video is the following. Quote, quote, one thing he's obsessed with is lobsters. As in, lobsters have gender hierarchy. And you wouldn't say that lobsters oppress their women, would you? Dun, dun, dun. JBP definitely hates women. Am I right, guys?
Let me just get this straight. You're saying that we should organise our societies along the lines of the lobsters?
Absolutely. The latest in hashtag #MeToo, so we're going to move on to another story, includes a Vox article to be covered in the main stories and one in Harper's Magazine, which is critical of the extremes of this movement. The author, Katie Roiff, I hope I'm not butchering that, could not get women to talk to her for the piece because of a rumor that she was going to out the creator of the so-called, quote, shitty media men, end quote, list and betray her sisters. This list was part of the beginning of the Me Too movement that now has Uma Thurman joining its ranks, as she has recently made accusations against Weinstein, surprise, surprise, and Quentin Tarantino. A veterans ad urging people to stand for the national anthem that was to be aired during the Super Bowl was canceled or blocked after it was deemed to be, quote, too political. Meanwhile, here on YouTube, Right Wing Watch had a hit piece video that included clips of Dave Rubin, Six and Hammer 666, Roaming Millennial, and Sargon of Akkad put into limited state. Not sure why as of right now. And a comedian sues Upright Citizens Brigade, the UCB, for reverse gender discrimination. Aaron Glazier says in his federal suit that UCB should be stripped of the federal money it has received for, quote, hollow and wrongful allegations of sexual misconduct, as he has been accused of drugging and raping anonymous female comics despite never being questioned in any investigations. However, his employment prospects, well, let's just say that they are close to non-existent. This week on Meme Watch, we check back on Ugandan Knuckles to see if it represents hate. Polygon weighs in again and creates a meme timeline of before and after Pepe. Keck. They're waiting to make definite conclusions, watching if Ugandan Knuckles will become hateful like Pepe. That is, if the meme will remain in context of being a reference to a Ugandan action movie paired with a Sonic the Hedgehog character that is very poorly drawn. And finally, in the week in what, we have a cryptocurrency startup company completely disappearing with only a cryptic one-word statement: penis. The creators of the site for Proteum, a medication used to reduce infection of the urinary tract, have seemingly fucked off after reportedly raising millions in venture capital money, leaving their website with the important message. So that is the week in short. Now we're going to get into the main topics, but before we do, I'm going to introduce the other panelists. So today's Polecat panel consists of Max Darrett, Simpsonskin, and definitely not Golden Frieza. Holy shit, that was really nerdy. Our Polecat Punster and Pussycat Punisher, Hannah, Dr. Randombercam, Evil Panda, Puppet Master, and Rabid Long-Range Rhetorician, and me, the Supreme Doge in charge, back from an epic medical experience and ready to be exposed to even more cancer. Today we'll be discussing the following topics in detail. 19th century Romanticist painting Hylas and the Nymphs was removed from the Manchester Art Gallery because it was problematic on the topic of gender, objectification, and race. Fortunately, cooler heads have prevailed and the painting is now back. Vox has penned an article that piggybacks on the Me Too movement, cautioning against a slide into what it calls carceral feminism. You want to go deeper into the wokeness that is Vox? Follow me then. A student at James Madison University may be awarded almost $850,000 in damages from the school after a rape accusation made against him ruined his academic future. A girl has been convicted and sentenced for stabbing another girl 19 times after luring her into the woods of Wisconsin. Was it because of some personal feud? Maybe a fight over a boyfriend, perhaps? Nope. It was to appease the Slenderman. I'm serious. YouTube has another plan in the works to stop the Russians and their robot troll army from spreading propaganda and undermining elections. They will be targeting government and publicly funded news outlets on YouTube. PBS and NPR might be in some hot water then. Fiat. And finally, our bonus story for the patron-only after show. Amy Horton, writer for Bold.com's Single as Fuck section, also a former actress that apparently failed, has written an article that I think could be both entertaining and educational. So we're going to call it edutainment. I will let the title speak for itself. The title is, I've gotten blown off by men so much lately that I'm literally questioning everything. You don't say, Amy. You don't say. Anyway, if you would like to participate in our after shows either as an audience member or a participant, please consider becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. If you don't want to wake up one morning and find yourself unable to find our content because YouTube finally dropped the axe on our channel, go to badgerfeed.com. You should see badgerfeed.com at the top of your screen. We're going to be moving to a digest format for podcasting, so if you're listening to this in audio format and still want to follow our uncut live streams, you will also be able to find those at badgerfeed.com. Just go to badgerfeed.com. I finally got through all of that, and we can get into the stories. So I'm going to hand the floor over to Mr. Darrett.
Thank you.
And
yes, and before... What?
I was just saying go ahead.
Okay, before I begin, I just want to say something very quickly to Brian. To quote Hank from The Matrix, "Goddamn, it's good to hear your voice, sir."
Well, thank you, Max. It's good. It's good to be here. Actually, I'm actually quite excited about this.
Yes, as we all are. And ladies and gentlemen, I want you to be typing "welcome back" and give your thanks and wishes to Brian now that he's back. If that makes any sense. Okay, so we're going to be talking about underage naked girls. Recently, Manchester Art Gallery decided to temporarily remove a Victorian painting from a gallery titled In Pursuit of Beauty. The painting was titled Hylas and the Nymphs by J.W. Waterhouse. It sounds like a really bad 70s rock band.
I'm getting a message from people saying that you're coming in with a really big echo. Am I coming in an echo, or is it just Max that's echoing? It says Max is echoing. It may not be because of you, though. I just got to figure out why that is. Let me try to master section here. Go ahead and talk, Max. Say something.
My bloody has a first name. It's HBR. How about that? Is it still echoing? Hello. There was nothing in Al Capone's fault, but it wasn't Geraldo's fault.
Okay, so we're getting told now that it's coming through better. Now it's fine. So whatever it was that got changed, that must have been... That was weird.
Okay, so we're good now. Back to talking about underage naked women. All right. Recently, let's just start from the beginning again. Recently, Manchester Art Gallery decided to temporarily remove a Victorian painting from a gallery titled In Pursuit of Beauty. The painting was titled Hylas and the Nymphs by J.W. Waterhouse, and it displays pictures of, supposedly, naked adolescent girls. Curator Claire Ganaway said there were, quote, tricky issues about gender, race, and representation in the gallery. She also said that the gallery was very old-fashioned because it depicts women, quote, either as passive beautiful objects or femme fatales. I wonder if that's because it's a Victorian gallery. However, due to severe backlash from critics calling the curators what they are, puritanical and politically correct, the painting will return on Saturday. Aside from criticism on social media, visitors to the Manchester Art Gallery were able to write their views about the painting's removal on sticky notes and paste them in the vacant space on the wall. One sticky note said what we're all thinking, quote, feminism gone bad, I'm ashamed to be a feminist. Well, maybe not that second part, but you get the point. Another said, quote, create or display art that reflects current ideologies alongside classical pieces. There is room for both. Yeah, that's more like what we're thinking. That is just two of a couple of 100 sticky notes that were pasted on the wall. In response to the criticism, the gallery's interim director, Amanda Wallace, said the following. Not the Amanda... Oh, no, wait, that's Amanda Waller. That's from Suicide Squad, not Amanda Wallace. My bad. Okay, she said the following, quote, we were hoping the experiment would stimulate discussion, and it's fair to say we've had that in spades, and it's not just from local people, but from art lovers around the world. Throughout the painting's 7-day absence, it's been clear that many people feel very strongly about the issues raised, and we now plan to harness the strength of feeling for further debate on these wider issues. And during the painting's absence, yes, postcards of the painting were also removed from the gift shop. It is presumed they will be returning as well. And that's all Ogre. So I'll just give my quick thoughts on this. Yeah, you know what? I'm not particularly keen to look at displays of underage women without any clothes on. You know what? This comes from a different time, and obviously we're in an age now where we frown upon that sort of thing. But I don't believe it should be censored, naturally, because you want to see where things used to be and how things can progress beyond that, and just appreciate the way that the painting is done. For its colors and for its composition, more so than just what the content is. Or even besides that, maybe there's something else to the picture besides just showing naked underage girls. Maybe there's a particular story behind Hylas and the Nymphs. Maybe that's some old Greek tale that I'm not aware of. And just the beauty of the painting might draw you into figuring out what that story is. That's what paintings are supposed to do. They're supposed to capture you with a single image and make you want to investigate them even closer. But yeah, just deciding to take them off the wall and use that as a way to spur discussion. They could have done this 100 other ways, and this wasn't the right way to do it, in my opinion.
Well, I got to point some things out here. First of all, they're nymphs. If they're supposed to be nymphs, actual nymphs, the fantasy creature nymph, they're not human. So you don't know if they're underage or not. That's something I think that feminists just kind of imposed on the image. And second of all, adolescence continues into adulthood, into legal adulthood. Your adolescence continues past 18. So the idea of them having to be underage isn't necessarily a rational approach that feminists took to this. They just presumed them underage because they all have small tits. That basically, I mean, the picture shows a bunch of women in a pond that are almost entirely covered by the water. Some of them have their backs to the viewer or are covered by plants. So it's getting all bent out of shape over this image. It's fitting that they got all bent out of shape over an image painted during the Victorian era when people started getting all bent out of shape over moral issues. It's just like it just blows my mind. Sorry,
no,
I'm just laughing my ass off about this, which they would probably consider pornographic too.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to this because I know this painting. And I'm a big fan of the period. So this painting came out during the Romantic period, where there were a lot of these very romanticized paintings that took inspiration from a lot of Greek and Roman mythology. And so this painting is actually it's from Jason and the Argonauts story. And there's a scene during the story of Jason and the Argonauts where this guy, I forget his name, Hylas, he comes across the Nymphs, and the Nymphs are these kind of, immortal beautiful temptresses that don't have an age. They're just these mythological creatures. So it seems to me, and I'm going by what you're saying, Hannah, but also when I look at this painting and I see people saying, oh, these are underage girls, my first thought is, without getting into, nymphs don't have an age, this is a painting, it's just a depiction of women in a pond that, are tempting this man to join him. How do you know how old they are? Like, because they're slight of build, that doesn't tell you that they're underage. Like, what does that even mean? Like, how are you applying this logic to this 19th century painting that is depicting a moment from a mythological story? And then you
wait. You mean that feminists might be imposing strict standards of what women's bodies should look like on this artwork?
Well, that, you know what, that is an interesting question that you're posing. I don't know. Like, maybe, yeah. I think that might be what's happening. Like, these women are not. I mean, you know, if you look at the painting, they clearly hit puberty, so they're not children. I don't know, but the thing is, I think that the fact that we're even discussing this is really annoying, because it should be. This shouldn't even have become a thing. Like the Manchester Gallery taking it down even for a week because they listened to what someone proclaimed without any evidence, without any logical reason, and then they listened and took the painting down is ridiculous. It's just so goddamn ridiculous that I couldn't believe that this had happened and that there was justification. And when people were putting up their post-its and they were basically like, you know, there were some people who were saying this is feminism, it's gone too far, which I'm like, okay, you know, yeah, that's fine. But then someone else was like, well, why don't we just have like some of these old paintings with some new paintings so you can see both ideologies? I'm sorry, but I'm not sure that romanticism was an ideology. I think it was just an aesthetic theme that people liked. Like, I mean, this is a beautiful painting and people really liked this kind of stuff. And, you know, in that time period, this was, you know, America was still a pretty young country, and we were really, as a country, we were really into the old Greek and Roman, you know, sort of their aesthetic, you know, what they were going for. That's why a lot of our state buildings have, you know, columns and they look Grecian. You know, that comes from that. It was a neoclassical is what they called it, and the Romantic period came after the neoclassical period, which is a natural evolution of the artwork. So you had people that wanted to sort of like, you know, get back into these old myths and fables from Greek and Roman times, and this is one of those paintings, and it's gorgeous. But then, you know, I don't know that modern art would even look good next to this stuff. I mean, as much as I don't like modern art, I would say it has a right to exist. But I think that the idea that you would try to put, you know, that there could be this compromise is retarded. Like, this is just a beautiful painting that everyone has seen. It's a classic. Leave it alone. I mean, this could easily be the Mona Lisa for the same logic. They could just say, well, I think she was underage and we shouldn't be admiring her beauty, even if there's no nudity, even if it's just a smiling woman. There are people who are going to try and shit on it. And this is what I think is happening ultimately. And it's based on nothing. It's so dumb.
There's something else that's going on here. The ideal of beauty at that time was, you know, that body shape. Like, that's what a young lady was supposed to look like in adulthood. If
sure.
This is like, suppose this is somebody painting what they think looks to be the sexiest woman they can imagine. The nymphs were supposed to be incredibly alluring and incredibly innocent, because they were just at that age where you would get married, where you would be, you know, falling in love with somebody. So
essentially they were
drawn.
Essentially they were as beautiful and as neotenous as possible. They were perfect.
Right. So basically, if this was to be painted today, based on today's ideals of beauty in the United States, they would probably all be D cups, and nobody would question their age, because that's, you know, or there would be, if you got somebody that liked different boob sizes, you have a whole range in the pond, and that's just the way it is.
Well, look, it depicts women living in the water. So what you're saying is women are lobsters.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, does anybody else have any thoughts on this, or should we move on to the next story?
Actually, if they don't have any sunscreen, and clearly back then they probably didn't, they will eventually become like lobsters.
That's right.
Food for thought, ladies and gentlemen.
There we go. Oh, if you want food for thought, think of it this way. Every woman you know was at some point in her life, for at the very least several moments at a time, repeatedly, a naked underage woman. A naked underage girl. Just saying.
Well, yeah, like they might become lobsters. It might become quite steamy once Hylas jumps in the pool with those other women. If he does. But let's hope that the nymphs aren't actually underage, because then that would be extremely wrong.
There's nothing worse than an underage demon from the netherworld.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think there were a few of those living in my neighborhood. I used to have to honk to get them out of the way when I wanted to come in through the driveway, because that's when they wanted to ride their little skateboards back and forth across.
Yeah. Well, you haven't met my little cousin Avery, Mike.
Or have I?
Okay, then I might have to take you to court at that. Yeah.
I know who you are. I know who all of you are. I know where you live.
He's everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
Yes, and you will live there.
He's like Santa Claus that way.
Liberals get the bullet too says, "Oh, so I'm gonna be turning down the volume now. Are we loud? Oh yeah, I know the echo. I'm sorry, guys.
It's just to everybody here on the panel. Does Brian cut out a little bit at the end of his sentences for you?
I'm hearing a little bit of cutting in and out, but I thought it was me because my internet's doing that.
No,
thing.
I assumed it was the Discord, right?
No, well, it could be the Discord. I don't know if it's set to grab my volume. I should check that real quick. But the let me hold on a second. Automatically determine input sensibility. Aha, that's the problem. That's the problem. All right, there we go. Okay, it says you guys echo whenever two people are talking at once. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
All right, cool.
Yes.
And then somebody
But I think
I'm lower.
Oh,
Let me just.
I was going to say I think we are echoing whenever you're not muted.
Right. So that's why I'm trying to because I'm using this new sound thing, and I tested the stream on my own, but I never did it with another person. So I may have to make some adjustments after the show. But for now, I'm going to try to mute myself when I'm not talking, which, depending on the delay, may cause me to seem to cut off right at the end or whatever. But that's okay. I'll figure it out. But in the meantime, I wanted to add something to this painting thing, but I can't. I lost it, so I guess it was not that big of a deal. Oh well. So we'll move on to the we'll move on to the next story unless there's something else. I'm muting myself when I'm not talking. So
should we read the super chats?
That was what I wanted to say. Thanks, man. I wanted to read the super chats. That's right.
See, we're Brian, you and I are sort of like those two people inside the Jaegers in Pacific Rim. We have like a neural bridge.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly it. We're drift compatible, Max. All right,
there you go.
I'm gonna go look at the super chats here. Hold on. So, just a moment. I got a few. Holy shit! Joey Jojo gives us $5 and says, "The Nymphs painting reminds me of the video game Dragon's Crown, and yes, feminists hated that game too. Great game, to be honest. I agree. Dragon's Crown is great, and it has a lot of artwork in it that is inspired by actual paintings. So you should look at the you can look that up online to find out how many paintings from the artwork, how much artwork in the game is inspired by real classical paintings. It's good stuff." Redicus gives us $5. Oh, Max, you wanted to comment on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say quickly, feminists hate video games in general unless they're like choose your own adventure stories like Life is Strange.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you guys may have heard where is it? This before?
I wrote a blog post about why I hate video games. Because this is what it does. It feels like the male fantasy.
God forbid. Yeah, I can hate romantic novels because they appeal to the female fantasy.
Exactly. All right, next super chat. Redicus gives us $5 and says, Nymphs are supernatural temptresses, so they have no age. Yeah, absolutely. Hoki Bukisa gives us $4.20 and says 38 is the new
Blaze it, bro.
Yeah. 38 is
Thank
the
you,
new
Mike.
18, or so they wish. And then Hoki
38 is 18.
Yeah, 38 is the new 18. And then Hoki Bukisa gives us another $2 and says, Brian's mic is forwarding everyone else's voice. Yeah, that's probably the problem. I'm using Voice Meter Banana to pipe through the sound, and I need to, I don't know how, but I need to figure out how to keep my sound separate from theirs so that you don't get the echo. So I apologize for that. So right now the solution is I mute when I'm not talking, and we try not to talk over each other when I'm talking.
Banana. That sounds vaguely patriarchal.
Too clever not using zucchini.
Yeah.
Or eggplant.
Or eggplant.
Oh, another super chat. Fielder Bears gives us $5 and says, I've just showed up. Has anybody reminded you that socialism always ends in starvation and genocide yet?
Wait, that's not true. Real socialism hasn't been tried. How dare you?
Yeah, duh.
Duh.
You're a Nazi.
Live in the now.
Yeah, Nazism has been tried, so don't even attempt to tell me it hasn't. The person who murdered Hitler is my hero.
God damn it. Now, this is going to get flagged just for that. Thanks a lot, Brian.
I don't know. That's a little cerebral. Do you think they'll get it?
That's true.
Okay, be confused. Be very confused. Moving on to the next story. This is a good one. It should be interesting. So, Vox, who you guys know is a totally credible and not at all bullshit news source, like Mike.com. Vox on carceral feminism. Stacking on previous stories on the backlash to the Me Too movement is a recent article published on Vox, calling for the circumvention of what it calls, quote, carceral feminism, end quote. The author, Alex Press, is worried that in attempting to resolve sexual assault, there will be a greater reliance on policing, prosecution, and imprisonment. You don't say. Press claims that this will correspond with a greater enforcement of existing laws, which will lead to the imprisonment of more black and brown people, see men, especially with a president that embraces and publicizes racist explanations for social problems, end quote, blah, blah, blah. He is also concerned that further protections will backfire on women and uses the 1994 Violence Against Women Act, or VAWA for short, as an example. Press cites that nearly half of all states have mandatory arrest laws grown out from the VAWA, where when one phones the police about a domestic violence dispute, the police must arrest someone, and that someone may be the real victim. Lol. And that by calling the police, you may... I'm sorry, let me say that sentence again. And that by calling the police, you may be victimized further because of a, quote, well-established pattern of police officers committing rape and sexual assault against those that they arrest, end quote. And just the act of calling 911 itself can ruin a female tenant's residency because that landlord can use any police calls to their property as grounds for removal. Though Press sees the danger in seeking assistance from the state, even with the Violence Against Women Act, he completely ignores which sex this impacts the most, preferring to conflate all harms going exclusively to poor women and women of color. And while Press wants the Me Too movement to avoid justice that begets more violence, he determines equality and redistribution of wealth to be the solution. If you were ever lost on the whole feminism/Marxism link, it's a pretty informative read. So, this is a ridiculous article. So, carceral feminism is basically feminism that relies on the police state to imprison people. It's funny because it leaves out the fact that the majority of people that are often going to prison, especially when people call the police for domestic disputes, it's going to be men most of the time. And yes, that means that in cases where men of color or black men are going to prison, it's still men. It's actually probably got more to do with the fact that they're men than it has to do with the fact that they might be minorities. Does anybody else want to say anything about this article?
Oh yeah, I have a whole lot to say about this article. They stuffed as many lies as they could in here. Let's see. Going back to the greater reliance on policing, prosecution, and imprisonment, and greater enforcement of existing laws. What they're basically saying here is that violent crime is primarily committed by black people. This and then here they are trying to call other people prejudiced by saying that violent crime is primarily committed by black people. You know, this is, I mean, like that's pretty much it. You're saying other people are prejudiced for holding them accountable for their actions when they commit crimes that are primarily committed by people of color. Now, I'm not going to say yes or no that's the case. There's evidence that they are more discriminated against than white men in the court system, and there's evidence that there is a racial divide in being held accountable, but it's not enough to explain the gap in arrests and everything. And it's very much an oversimplification for them to label it bigotry, that gap exists. And it's also an oversimplification to say that because the gap exists, it says something about black people. So it's both sides of that are racist. There are circumstances that they should be looking into, and for them to assume, among other things, that sexual violence and partner violence are like in the top of that set, that's another issue, because there's not necessarily evidence of that. Another thing that they're not accounting for here is differences in styles of handling conflict. Some people sit down and discuss things. Some people scream and yell at each other. And apparently screaming and yelling at each other is no different under the law than, you know, wailing on each other. You can go to jail for yelling at your partner too loud if the neighbors call the cops. And your partner says, "Yes, I was scared." If you're a guy, of course. The other thing that they basically lied about, they talked about the victim calling the cops and then getting arrested instead of their perpetrator getting arrested, as if that's a female problem. That's a male problem. That happens to male victims of partner violence. When women call the cops, they bend over backwards. They do everything they possibly can to not arrest the woman, because their funding is negatively impacted if they do too often. So there has to be significant evidence that the woman is the primary aggressor before she even gets considered for arrest. And that is even if she started the fight. Even if it's obvious that she started the fight. If she looks more injured or she looks more scared, she's not gonna get arrested. She's gonna get the guy arrested. And as far as the cops having to arrest someone, that policy only exists because feminists advocated for it. And it wasn't something that it wasn't mainstream. This was something that you saw feminists like Gloria Steinem and Susan Brownmiller went in and testified to Congress. Gloria Steinem published fake research by Mary Koss, research that was designed specifically to demonize men as violent predators in order to get this law passed. You know, this was not something that was not a mainstream effort. So to talk about this this type of feminism as if it is a subset that's, off to the side and it's not the real feminism. No, it's what feminism has always been, and it's what it's always done. So it's that if they're going to rail now against what the second wave sought, I mean, maybe they ought to take a look at fighting to get VAWA reverted back to the Family Violence Protection and Services Act of 1984, which still labeled assault and other types of violent attacks violence, and still labeled them crimes if they were in the home, which had established funding for shelters, which had established a 24-hour hotline. All of the functional aspects of VAWA were already in that law. The only reason they wanted VAWA was to gender it, to exclude men from shelters, to create these mandatory arrest, mandatory prosecution, mandatory conviction, mandatory sentencing, and mandatory serving out your sentence policies. And then to create a self-perpetuating machine that essentially uses research done using feminist biased methodology at facilities that only accept female victims to perpetuate the idea that only women are victims of domestic violence. This is all of this. This goes right at the feet of mainstream feminism, not some off to the side branch, not some, this has to be stopped, we don't need this anymore kind of feminism. Feminism as it always was. This is what you get from feminism, and it's all it's ever been. So, like all of that, and then the last lie they put in there, just the act of calling 911 itself can ruin a female tenant's residency because the landlord can use any police calls to their property as grounds for removal. That's not true. You can't discriminate against crime victims. The only way they can discriminate against a crime victim is if you were victimized because a crime you committed, like being a drug dealer, attracted criminals to the property. Like to steal the drugs that you're trying to sell to other people. Then you can be considered a problem client. But if you're just a crime victim, they can't discriminate against you like that. You could sue. And the idea that a landlord would take that risk is ludicrous. So it's this article is such absolute bullshit.
Yeah, it is. Max, go ahead.
So let me get this straight. This guy, correct me if I'm wrong, this guy is suggesting that with greater policing in domestic violence circumstances, he's afraid that women will be re-victimized, and apparently, according to him, sometimes police officers will either rape or sexually assault women arrested in domestic violence scenarios. Is that what he's saying?
Yep.
Are you fucking really? How many? Okay, unless you have a knife in your back, every single time any sort of domestic violence situation happens, 9 times out of 10, it's the man that's getting arrested and the woman that's staying at home. Are you seriously that concerned about? Really?
Got it. Women have to come first, Max. In all cases. And there's just he says that there's a well-established pattern of police officers committing rape and sexual assault against those that they arrest. Citation needed. I'd like to see that, because if they're mostly arresting men and there's a pattern of them committing rape and sexual assault against those that they arrest, then doesn't that mean that they're mostly sexually assaulting and raping other men? That seems a little bit hard to swallow. I mean, at least in the West.
What's going on there is this person is describing something that happens sometimes as a well-established pattern. The idea being, if something happens once every 10 years, it's a well-established pattern. It's a rare occurrence, but it's still a pattern. If something happens once a year, it's a well-established pattern. It's, still a rare occurrence, but it is a pattern. there are corrupt cops, just like there are corrupt people in any other profession that has authority as part of its responsibility. Clearly there are corrupt politicians. There are corrupt media. There are corrupt educators. There are corrupt people in the profession of education. There are corrupt administrators in every area of administration, and including business, including government, everywhere. So for police forces to be an exception to the rule would be weird. But the fact that corruption extends to police work, just like every other profession, does not make all cops corrupt. It doesn't make the abuses that occur with cops that are corrupt common to the profession. It doesn't mean that all cops are a problem, and it certainly doesn't mean that the fact that there is an existing behavior means that it's going to happen all the time. And when they get caught, they have the book thrown at them, especially in situations like this. They end up publicly humiliated for it, which, frankly, if you take a profession like that where you are responsible for other people and then you abuse them, I don't feel too bad about people being publicly humiliated for that. But it's a dishonest portrayal of something that what they're saying about it is a half-truth, which, my dad likes to refer to as, all half-truths being 100% lie, because they're a mischaracterization of a real thing. And that's the situation.
2 is 2. That's a half-truth.
Yeah. And that's essentially what they're doing here. It happens, but it's not necessarily a reason to never trust cops. And the idea that women or men should not rely on the law enforcement system to enforce laws against violent crime, because sometimes you encounter cops that are corrupt, is ridiculous. I mean, if you were going to make that argument, you might as well make the argument to eliminate police forces altogether.
Yeah, I just didn't know that Harvey Keitel was back on police duty.
Well, I mean, we had a controversy like that here in the Dayton area. Years ago, there was a set of officers in Beaver Creek that got busted for essentially scamming. And I wasn't even living here at the time, so I don't know the whole story, but scamming young women. They pulled over for speeding. And they got fired. Their new names were public. There were news stories about it. They ended up, they couldn't stay in their neighborhoods because everybody knew what they did. They were punished. They received not only regular punishments, but also fines on top of that. And then, of course, they're never going to work in police work again. So they've lost their careers on top of that. And it wasn't, my understanding is it wasn't all one thing. It was, give us money, give us blowjobs, whatever they wanted at the time. And this was, I'll let you out of the ticket if you do this or if you do that. And give me that radio, give me that this, or give me that you have in your car. And that was corruption. And it was, it came out, it was exposed, it was addressed by the community, it was handled, there was punishment involved, the victims had recourse. And that's how you handle corruption in any profession. Not by acting like the entire profession cannot be trusted because there are people in the world who are corrupt, and this particular profession is not exempt from that.
All right. Thank you for those words of wisdom. All right. So, is there anyone else has any thoughts, and if not, I will go on to the super chats.
One very quick thing I just wanted to say: if this guy is concerned about rape and sexual assault happening under the watchful eye of police officers, and you care about stuff like rape culture, let me tell you something. You know where there's documented evidence of that sort of thing happening with police being involved? Sorry, I'm channeling Justin Trudeau. You know where that sort of thing has been documented? American prisons. Yeah. That's where the rape culture is in the West if you're seeking it out. And you know what? It's predominantly happening to men.
And it's predominantly being committed by female prison guards, not male prison guards.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's in the juvenile justice system as well. It is primarily being committed by female guards, even though they are less than half of the guards. 95% of staff misconduct. I shouldn't necessarily say guards, because in the juvenile justice system, there are also teachers and other employees that may be female. But in the juvenile justice system, 95% of staff misconduct, sexual misconduct with inmates that are reported by the inmates is the perpetrator named is female.
Yep.
So we're, this is stuff that's happening in public areas of the facilities quite frequently as well too, and most of it's taking place in broad daylight. And like the easiest way to stop something like this is if in all public areas of these facilities, they would just put cameras. Fix it right away. If they knew they were on camera, they wouldn't be able to do it. Or, and this is probably a much less popular solution, but it would work, take the women out of those facilities. If they can't be in those facilities without committing rape, then maybe they shouldn't be there.
Precisely. I have a couple this isn't a super chat, but I think it's an interesting point. Black Knight Fool, who has been watching us for a long time, says, Honey Badger Radio, Hannah, it's a decoy argument which is really about circumventing the justice system regarding sexual assault and harassment allegations to words a mob. I think he means to replace it with mob justice as a means of dealing with it. There's a reason why it doesn't make sense, because it's not the primary issue. And in the original article where the guy writes, he does talk about, okay, so we need to back off the police state. We don't want to use it because they're known for, I guess, being like racist and stuff or whatever, because that's basically the implication, is the police system is racist itself, and therefore when women of color are going to be affected, which is really stupid because again, it's mostly men, and the reasons is because they're men, they're more likely to get arrested. And we know that from the way that domestic violence sort of shakes out in terms of who ends up going to prison. But then he also says, which I think is really strange, he determines that in order to solve the problem of this sort of disparity in justice, like where the police they target minorities and people of color and the poor, is if we just redistribute the wealth, then that would be less of a problem. And I don't understand how that's the solution, except that it's just something else that he wanted to throw in there, and this is the only way he could work it in. So because in his article, I think he says something to the extent of how the rich can avoid justice because they have money and power. So if more people had it, or at least if the rich had less, which is probably more likely what he's thinking, then they wouldn't be able to utilize it. So, yeah, there's a lot of weird arguments that are floating around there.
It's all an example of social justice types not understanding the dynamics of the problem. How redistribution of wealth was a contributing factor to the problem. A lot of violent crime, a lot of drug crime, and drug crime is an area where there is a larger disparity between whites and minorities in terms of arrest and prosecution and conviction and so on. And in that particular area, among certain minorities, there's a bigger gender gap too.
Yeah, one other thing I want to say real quick. Another reason could be because if this guy got like what he believes would be the best solution would be essentially, if we stopped calling police, then we wouldn't need to use due process. We could just use what Black Knight Fool, I think, is suggesting, mob rule. Essentially, listen and believe instead, right? So,
which worked out really well for black people in the South during the Jim Crow era, didn't it? That mob rule is, a great tool if you want to do the wrong thing. But
This is what they mean when they say there can be no freedom without law. If there wasn't the police out there sorting out rapes, then it would just be done by revenge over the generations. You know, you raped one of ours, so we'll rape 3 of yours. So, well, you raped 3 of ours, so we'll rape 7 of your. You know, having some kind of force out there that does this sort of thing fairly, I think is probably a good idea, given what happens without it.
And for some reason, now I'm hearing banjos in my head. But it just immediately brought back memories of the legends of the Hatfields and the McCoys. Not that rape was there; they killed each other instead, obviously. But no, in terms of the getting rid of the police state, I'm all for the idea of reducing, significantly reducing some of their responsibilities. For instance, the drug war is ridiculous. One of the dumbest, in terms of actual functionality, one of the dumbest things America did was allow our government to become the arbiter of what we may or may not choose to ingest. I mean, there has never been any instance of substance prohibition that did not result in organized crime, mass death, police corruption, and death of good cops, and on the side, deaths in neighborhoods where there isn't any crime being committed. You know, and I'm living in what was labeled by Fox News in the last few months the opiate capital of the United States. Dayton has the dubious honor of being labeled the opiate capital of the United States. I mean, I look around and there's like every week there's another news story about some couple ODing in their car with their kids in the back seat, in their car seats, and the cops finding them like that. And these are not people that live in shitty neighborhoods. These are people that look like they came from, you know, some suburb where everybody's middle class, and it's all heroin, and people are dying instantly from fentanyl. And there was a local cop that was exposed to it, trying to save somebody's life who OD'd on this shit, and just touching them, he got the shit on his skin and had a medical emergency, and they actually had to use 4 injections of God, I can't think of what it's called, the antidote. It's an insane situation, and it's very clear from the local situation that drug laws don't mean jack or shit to people who want to destroy their own lives. Their kids don't even stop them. You know, so there's no point to having this system set up. And the only reason that they could possibly be continuing it is because it gives them the ability to make people believe that the state can handle this as an emergency, and they just need a little bit more authority and a little less due process, and it'll all be fixed. And they've actually got it to the point now where your medical rights, like the rights that you are supposed to be able to expect regarding medical privacy, if the state wants to know what you're ingesting, they don't exist. You immediately lose all of those rights. They can poke into your information because they think you're an addict. They can decide what you can and can't take. They can decide what medical treatment you can and can't give. And they can even equate needing medical treatment with being addicted. So I'm all for ending that end of the police state. But to equate it with dealing with actual domestic violence, violent crimes, rape, murder, burglary, stuff like that, it's just stupid and dishonest. And that's what social justice warriors do. They oversimplify everything in order to lay blame where they want to lay blame so that they can advocate for what they want to advocate for. And I'll be damned if their readers don't buy it.
Yep. Uranium. Sorry, you said earlier there's no substances that have been prohibited that they didn't. And
Well, it's
think-
actually not illegal to ingest uranium.
Well, it's illegal to have it, but the reason being that the people who want to have uranium want to have it so that
They can make
generally
bombs.
so they can kill shitloads of people. Yeah, the maximum amount of people you can kill with a drug is one yourself. Again, maybe a police state is necessary to prevent people from getting their hands on uranium, but it's not necessary to stop people from getting their hands on weed. Well, because that kills exactly 0 people. Ugh.
Yeah. Okay, so we don't get caught in the weeds argument. I'm gonna go ahead and look at the super chats. Point Curation gave us $2 Canadian and says the honey badgers are modern day superheroes. Thank you, Point Curation, for the $2.
My special power is turning everyone gay except myself.
Oh, well, that explains
It's the world's saddest superpower, but it's mine.
I get to be Spider-Man, but I won't tell you where the webs are coming from.
Oh, it's more Tobey Maguire Spider-Man then, huh? Redicus
He means his penis.
God damn it.
Redicus gives us $2 and says feminism equals gender communism. Yeah, it seems to be. I think, well, we can get into a pretty big conversation about that, but I think
gender communism would mean proletariat rising against the bourgeoisie. Feminism, if anything, is the bourgeoisie rising against the proletariat.
Yeah.
Anything the opposite of communism.
Yeah, but the women, there's no way, like, if the women were the proletariat and the men were the bourgeoisie, that war would end in like 7 minutes.
But it is, while it is the bourgeoisie rising up against the proletariat, it's also the bourgeoisie rising up against the proletariat while believing it's the it is the proletariat rising against the bourgeoisie.
But that is how communism works. Like every time, that's the problem.
Well, let's take this another layer, because what's really happening here is the bourgeoisie getting the proletariat to fight among themselves on behalf of the bourgeoisie.
That's correct. And we got one $10 donation. Thank you so much, man. Hoki Bukisa, sorry, gives us $10 and says, we the people need to have our own gang, and it needs to be the most dominant, well-armed, and best-trained gang, or some other gang will take over. Hi, South America.
Okay, if we start a gang, I want to give it a ridiculous name, because then every time they talk about it on the news, they'll have to say the ridiculous name.
Like honey badgers?
No, something genuinely ridiculous, you know. Like, oh yeah, we're the fuck nuts. Just, saying.
We're the huge ass groupies.
There we go. Well,
Well,
it's like I said,
silly.
we said if I ever started a band, I'd call it Your Mom, so that, anytime somebody asked, they say, I'm going to go to a concert, and their friends would ask, oh yeah, who are you going to go see? Your mom.
Hey-o.
Maybe we should call the gang Your Mom.
There was a market for this before the internet. Now it's unsearchable. Try searching for Your Mom on Google. What do you think you're going to find, eh?
Oh, yeah, you definitely don't want to search that.
Yeah, really.
Stereotypical badger living hamburger.
Okay, so shut up, man. All right, let's go ahead and get into the next story. If there is nothing else, James Madison University. Hold on, I better put this on the screen so you guys can see the story we're talking about. James Madison University may have to pay $850,000 in attorney fees to student railroaded during Title IX investigation. A James Madison University student, John Doe, might not be his real name, has had quite a college experience. Doe was accused of sexually assaulting an RA in August of 2014. Jane Rowe, his accuser, filed the complaint in October of 2014. After a Title IX investigation, a panel determined that he was, quote, not responsible for the sexual assault, end quote. However, the 2011 Obama Department of Education Dear Colleague letter allowed accusers to appeal the results of an investigation. In criminal cases within the U.S., this would be a violation of Fifth Amendment, which prohibits a double jeopardy in criminal cases. Unfortunately for Doe, the quasi-judicial Title IX system universities have enacted don't seem to need to follow the U.S. Constitution. A second panel was convened in which Roe introduced a new evidence, a voicemail that she left for a friend supposedly showing that she was too drunk and unable to give consent. However, what the panelists did not find out until it was too late was that the voicemail was left a day before the supposed sexual encounter. Doe was not allowed to examine the new evidence or make a statement about it, violating his right to due process. While the board did not find him responsible for the sexual assault, the panel still imposed a 5-year suspension, which is enough to ruin you if you're in college. What makes this particular appeal so unusual was that the appeal panel did not give any reason for the change in the original ruling or why a suspension was put in place in the first place. Fast forward, and James Madison University refused to settle with Doe over the course of many years. The attorneys for JMU had recommended being responsible for only $364,000, saying that Doe's use of a second law firm during the proceedings was unnecessary. The judge, Joel Hopp, disagreed, citing the uniqueness of the case and the lawyer's experiences, reputations, and abilities. Instead, Hopp recommended recommends that the university will be required to pay nearly $850,000 in attorney fees, which is less than the $1 million that Doe requested, but significantly more than what the university attorneys had suggested. Hopp's recommendation now goes back to the trial judge, Elizabeth Dillon, who presided over the original suit. Doe brought a suit of deprived property interest regarding his education, to which Judge Dillon offered a summary judgment in his favor. Win?
Costs a lot the virtue signal, huh? Fucking idiots.
Okay. Any thoughts on this guy's? I don't know what. See, the thing is, though, it's a lot of money, right? But I'm not sure that it's actually going to make up for what he lost, because if he was suspended for many years, that means he didn't get to go to college, right? So he missed out on his education. Now, I mean, I could sit here and maybe make the argument as to why maybe college isn't necessary, but I don't know what he's going to college for, so I'm not gonna go down that road. So let's just say that he lost the money for college, he lost the money on the fees, and his reputation was harmed. Hell, he was probably had trouble maybe getting a job and other things. So he's lost a lot of money. I'm not sure that the $850,000 is actually going to be enough to compensate. It sounds like a lot, but he may have lost more and may still lose more. So it's just something to think about. This is I mean, I'm glad that this turned out in his favor, but to be quite honest, this shit should never have happened in the first place. I'm done talking about it now.
This fucking shit happens at every single... Sorry, and I know you want to say... I just have something quick to say. This shit happens every single week. I feel like we talk about a story like this every single Tuesday, where there's evidence that comes in at the last second and then everybody's exonerated, making the last 2 years or however long it takes for this sort of thing to get prosecuted to finish. Just for fuck's sake, like, I understand, wanting to believe victims, because even with the highest estimates there are about how often women lie about rape, what is it, 40%? Even with that, even if that were true, that still means the majority of women are telling the truth. I understand wanting to do that, but the thing is, you still need due process. You still need to give everybody their day in court so that shit like this doesn't happen. In every single circumstance possible, I would always want to make sure that innocent people are not going to jail. I would rather have that and let a couple bad guys go free than have somebody who did nothing wrong go to jail for a significant period of time, like Mr. John Doe. It's fucking ridiculous. Sorry, go ahead, Hannah.
Yeah, the bad thing about the situation is the universities were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place in this situation, and it's the fallout that they're experiencing is only partly their fault. Besides the Dear Colleague letter itself, there was the Campus Save Act, which it was very low-key passed a few years ago, and went into, it was part of the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act of 2014. And it went into effect, if I remember right, in March of 2014. And it mandated following essentially the guidelines of the Dear Colleague letter. So this was a situation where the universities, it wasn't just a funding issue at that point. There was actually a legal mandate for them to stick with the preponderance of evidence standard, to have a hearing every time somebody made an accusation, not necessarily even the alleged victim, but every time somebody made an accusation of sexual misconduct, and they had to follow a set of guidelines that was essentially, it came out of feminism, and it was essentially listen and believe. Now, there were some things that they did that were not mandated, like an imbalance in who had representation versus who didn't in a lot of the hearings. That actually went against policy. But the policy was clearly written to increase the number of men being found, young men being found responsible for sexual misconduct in university settings. And I think the university administrators were fully aware of that, and they did what they considered to be complying with that goal. So I'm really glad to see settlements like this happening, not so much because it's necessarily revenge against the universities, but because it demonstrates the dysfunction of this law, and it'll help to demonstrate a need for reform, and it'll demonstrate a need for reform in the administrations as well, and that's sort of starting to happen, except outside of California. So, hopefully what we'll see in the future is we'll start to see these universities exercising a little more common sense, and hopefully U.S. legislators will start to roll back some of the ridiculousness in law.
Yeah, definitely the overreach. And also, someone mentioned in the chat, and I was thinking about this, he's getting a settlement of $850,000, but a lot of that's going to go to the lawyers, especially because he had two teams at two different points. That's going to cost him quite a bit. So he's not going to be left with very much, and he's still going to have to pay for his tuition if he's going to finish school. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of a fucked up situation. I'm glad that it didn't go as like he certainly made out way better than many guys do, and I'm glad that much. But I mean, it's not like he's walking away, rich from all this. He didn't. I don't think he really did that well. So keep that in mind. But he did get through it. He's gonna be okay, I think. Let me see if there's any more super chats before I go on to the last story. It's pretty quiet. No one's given us anything new. I am looking, by the way, guys, if you're watching. I realize that despite my audio issues, which I'm going to fix before the next show, and I apologize for, I want you guys to let me know if the stream is relatively stable or if you're running into any lag. I upgraded my internet specifically so the show could run smoother. And also, I am looking at, I literally have Facebook, YouTube, both of our YouTube channels, and Twitch, all the chats open, all of the streams open at the same time, so I can look at them and make sure that they're, like you guys' chats are there, so I can see whatever you're saying. So let me know if that's working out, and we'll go on to the last story. Otherwise, or is it the last one? No, wait, yeah, that's the last one. Yeah, second to last. You're right. I forgot about Slenderman. Thanks, Max. I skipped ahead. Okay, so here we go. Second Slenderman stabber sentenced. I like all the S's. Thanks, Mike. J, not our Mike. Our other Mike.
Liberation City.
Yes. Good with the words. You guys are great with the words. You guys got the best words. In mid-2014, Anissa Weir and Morgan Geyser, wow, these names, both 12 years old at the time, lured their fellow classmate Peyton Lautner into the woods of Waukesha County, Wisconsin. There, the two attempted to stab Lautner to death in order to gain favor with the fictional supernatural being known as Slenderman. Despite being stabbed 19 times, Lautner managed to drag herself to a nearby road where she was discovered by a cyclist and ultimately brought to a hospital where she recovered. After a lengthy trial, both girls have finally been sentenced. So this is like from 2014 to now. We finally got a sentence. Wire initially pleaded guilty to being a party to attempted second-degree murder. In December of last year, she was found not guilty by means of mental disease or defect and was sentenced to 25 years in a mental hospital. Geyser had arranged a plea deal with the prosecutors, pleading guilty, eventually being found not guilty by means of mental disease or defect. On February 1st, Geyser was sentenced to 40 years in a mental hospital. According to Geyser's attorneys, she suffers from schizophrenia and psychotic spectrum disorder, though two doctors called by the defense during the trial suggest that she is no longer exhibiting any psychotic symptoms. I'm muting because of my dog. I'm sorry that my dog is barking in the background.
Slenderman did nothing wrong.
Yeah, the whole story is so sad. The first thing I thought of when I saw this is, didn't their parents pay attention to what they were doing on the internet? And didn't they pay attention to what they were talking about and obsessing over? And obviously, there was somewhere along the line that they didn't do that as much as they thought they did. And it's not exactly a rare thing. You know, not the attempt at killing, but parents not paying attention to what their kids are doing on the internet, and parents not paying attention to their kids' behavior enough to realize, hey, there's something serious going on here. This isn't your everyday imagination and stuff. To get obsessed with a fictional character like that, and then end up attempting to commit a murder to appease him. That's just, it doesn't matter male or female. That's nuts. And it's a tragic situation all around. It's really fortunate that, I mean, you really have to hand it to the victim in this to drag herself out of the woods with that many stab wounds. That is epic toughness. Again, male or female, that is epic toughness. And I think the sentence is appropriate. I don't think it would have been wrong to sentence this to hand down that sentence, whether it was male or female. But the one thing I will say that would be different is, I don't know if they would have necessarily believed boys who said, "I'm hearing voices. I did this because I'm losing my mind." I think they would have accused them of trying to get out of guilt by faking a mental illness. They would have looked at it harder, and they probably assumed the girls were mentally ill because normal girls don't do that kind of thing. You know, and if
a boy did it and attributed it to Slenderman, then they'd already be on a on a media hunt against Slenderman. So, this is what Slenderman does to the minds of young boys. It turns them mad, just like heavy metal and games.
Well, they could still do that. They could still do that now with girls. I could see an article coming out saying why Slenderman is problematic because he's a white male.
Yeah. Then all men would have to do in that circumstance is just say, I committed these murders because I play video games. Then they would believe them and put them in a mental facility. Please continue.
Now they'd still put them in jail. That's the thing.
I know.
It probably would have resulted in jail time if this had been boys instead of girls. They probably would have been tried as adults, and they probably would have been publicly demonized. And the truth is, the right thing was done in the girls' case. And had this been boys, the wrong thing would have been done. And this is when we talked about gender disparity in criminal court extensively on Badger Talk, and that's one of the things that was pointed out. A lot of organizations, mostly feminist, are fighting to replace jail time with therapy, with attempts at rehabilitation for just women in all areas of criminal violence and other forms of crime. The reality is, there's an area of criminal offense for which attempts at rehabilitation would be the best thing for both sexes. And it's not right to apply it only to one sex and then demonize the other.
For sure. Yeah, it is. It's a sad situation. I mean, 40 years is a long time to be in a mental hospital. But maybe that's what she needs. I don't know. I hope that they are going to be okay. Is all I'm saying. And the stab victim too. Jesus. But let me see if there's any new super chats. It's so quiet, you guys. Nobody's chatting us up. Oh, I want to be chatted up. I miss being chatted up. No super chats.
Wait, Jojo, say something about sex robots. I miss you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you.
Oh, there you are. You're just not giving us super chats. He's here, but he's.
Oh, he's definitely here. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys know about our YouTube awards. Like, I know we have Patreon donation awards, like where if you give a certain amount, you get something in return. We actually have that for YouTube as well. In case you guys don't know, if you actually donate $50 American on stream via Super Chat, Brian will actually masturbate live on air.
And you'll have to take our word for it.
Yes.
Believe me.
It's huge.
Well, I'll definitely do that, but I'm not telling you what I'm going to be masturbating. So there you go. You'll have to take my word for it. Moving on. Final story.
It's either you or the dog.
Well,
Red Rocket.
Sorry. No, it's fine. Final story. YouTube propaganda crackdown. Oh God. All right, so let's see how this goes. In the name of greater transparency for its users, creators, and advertisers, YouTube announced last Friday that they plan to start rolling out notices on videos made by news outlets that receive either government or public funding. This new feature will be tested out in the US first. Of course it will. YouTube hopes that the feedback they receive from the US test will help to improve and expand the feature over time. It's no secret that this move from YouTube is, at least in part, a response to the claims that they did not do enough during the 2016 presidential election to stop the spread of so-called Russian propaganda. It did not take long for YouTube to draw criticism. The American-based public broadcasting service, also known as PBS, was one of the first YouTube channels to be labeled a public or government-funded broadcaster, because it is. A spokesman for PBS said that label is, quote, both vague and misleading. I guess implying that maybe they aren't a public broadcasting service, even though that's what fucking PBS stands for. The spokesman stated that PBS receives the majority of their funding from private donations, with only a small percentage coming from the government. The spokesman also stated, quote, more importantly, PBS is an independent, private, not-for-profit organization, not a state broadcaster. YouTube's proposed labeling could wrongly imply that the government has influence over PBS content, which is prohibited by statute. If YouTube's intent is to create clarity and better understanding, this is a step in the wrong direction. Quote, or end quote, rather. PBS hopes to continue discussion of this new policy with YouTube. When asked for comment on the criticism raised by PBS, YouTube referred back to their original blog post. So essentially they were vague. So
they say it's going to be tested out in the US first. Are they going to roll it out to all the countries that have, government-funded broadcasting corporations, like Canada and the UK and quite a lot of Europe?
Australia as well. Yeah, I was just thinking if they go that route, man, the BBC is going to be like fucking. That's a problem for them. And what about Al Jazeera? Will they have to leave YouTube? Are they also isn't that channel backed by the Qatar or something like that? And then there's RT, I think that's like a Russia Today or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. YouTube will get a lot smaller. And they're talking about this is expanding the platform. I don't know. Well, I guess
they make money from adverts. And I know the BBC, I'm pretty sure they're not allowed to run adverts on their videos because, well, yeah, part of the idea of the BBC is they run from stolen wages of the people rather than from advertising revenue. So if they ever do get advertising revenue, then they'll be breaking that particular thing of whatever it is they're obliged to do. And YouTube's got to make money. They've been trying to make cutbacks on the things that don't get them money, and the channels that necessarily aren't are legally not allowed to get advertising revenue.
Yeah.
Maybe they're finally taking some shit out on the big guys instead of the little guys.
Well, I'll be honest, I don't really see a big problem with letting the public know if a particular channel is state-funded. I don't think that's not actually removing them from the platform. It's simply telling a fact about the channel. And it's not like it's not like anybody doesn't know that PBS receives public funding. But even if it was, would they really have the right to? Would the government really have the right to pretend to be an ordinary citizens group making videos and basically put propaganda on YouTube and have everybody think that it just came from fellow citizens, that it wasn't publicly funded? That's when something is. It's not the same as with a business. When something is controlled in any way, shape, or form by the government, the public has the right to know if they are interacting with that. They have the right to know if what they're watching comes from Uncle Sam or comes from any other government, any other country's government. It's not, and to be honest, I wouldn't see any problem with if an organization is running a channel that's not under their own organization's name, saying, yeah, you got to disclose this is from the SPLC, this is from the National Rifle Association, this is from Ohio Right to Life, this is from Planned Parenthood. It's like truth in advertising. Transparency itself is not a bad thing. What would be a bad thing is if YouTube starts labeling things government funded that aren't. And if they turn around and say, well, this originates in Russia, so therefore it must be government funded. This originates in Washington, D.C., so therefore it must be government funded. That's not fact. So they need to walk the line. They need to toe the line on this with, if they're going to put labels on stuff, they better be accurate. That's the only thing that I would say about it. Just if they're going to label something, label it accurately. And don't use the labels to demonize.
Honey Badger Radio is presented and funded by the state of Kakistan. I wonder if they include that. If they'll finally recognize Kakistan as a state for the sake of labeling them as such on YouTube.
Maybe we ought to maybe we ought to mimic their label and do it ourselves.
Yeah, there you go.
We're also funded by the Republic of Springfield.
Lol.
Yeah, boy. Today's show is brought to you by the letters K, E, and K.
Good stuff. Yeah, well, I got super chats. Okay, so Redicus gives us $5. Thank you, Redicus, and says, so would CNN be labeled since Hillary's cronies have their arms really far up Cuomo's ass? Well, you know what? That's actually a really interesting question. I wonder what counts, like if the Clinton Foundation essentially bought CNN. But, well, I don't know. I don't know that YouTube is gonna go that far, but it will be interesting to see. Joey Jojo gives us $2 and says YouTube should stop queer kid stuff and toy channels. What are the toy channels? You mean like sex toys?
Oh, I know what he's talking about. It's like there's these videos that were being passed around on YouTube where it like involves some really creepy shit with young adults, like adults taking. I think I could be completely wrong about this, but it's like adults taking baths with their children and filming it and doing some really, really creepy stuff. And yet YouTube did nothing about that sort of video, whereas they were demonetizing and removing videos from political YouTubers, that sort of thing. Guys,
you're talking about the videos where it's like parents, like expose children to sex toys for the first time or something.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. I remember that. Yeah, there's a video, I forget who put it out, but it was like parents with their kids, or supposedly with their kids, or maybe it was just adults with kids. I think it's parents with their kids, though. And they have like various vibrators and dildos on a table, and the kids are asking about, like, what is this? And the parents are trying to explain it to them.
Oh, I think I do remember that. And they had to blur out the sex toys, didn't they, in the video?
They did.
They didn't have to, sonically blur out the shit they were saying. But yeah, if you admit that you have to blur out the thing on YouTube, then how the fuck is this appropriate for YouTube?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, for that matter, how was it appropriate for them to show to their children in the first place? If you can't put it on YouTube, why would you show it to your children?
Not only that, Hannah, but YouTube put it on their, like, it was on their main page. Like, if you're not logged in and you go to, like, the trending page, yeah, it was there.
This is why I don't have any new videos on YouTube, actually. I'm moving. I haven't made any new videos in a while. I'm just kind of Yeah,
exactly.
And just like, holy fuck. The platform, I can't believe that these people knew this was happening, and they didn't just know it, they knew it for years, because there were big YouTubers complaining about it. So they knew it for years, and they condoned it. The fact that they did nothing about it until it became embarrassing, publicly embarrassing, and the fact that they demonstrated by attacking conservatives and people that they labeled alt-right, people that were anti-feminist, people that were politically incorrect, non-progressives or whatever, by attacking those people with all of us, with censorship and demonetization and that kind of thing, they demonstrated that they could have done something about it, and they didn't. That's condoning it. It's not an accident at that point. It's deliberate. And
for sure.
You can't trust a platform like that. That's disgusting. There isn't even anything else to say about it other than I don't understand how they could have gotten away with that. But they did.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right, so Xiao Jie Wu gives us $5 and says, fund medical research to fight against the spread of PBS. Hashtag PBS awareness. And then I have two other super chats. One from Observing Libertarian for $2. Thank you. Says, Brian, good to have you back. Much Doge love. And thank you for that. And then also another $10, and he writes, the Adpocalypse 2.0 was pedophilic videos of nude and nearly nude children playing with toys, creating sexual content, which pedos were sharing as an underground kind of softcore pedo porn. So maybe it's not the that toy video I was talking about, but that sounds a lot fucking worse. Not because the thing is, when I heard, like Max said, like these creepy videos of adults bathing with their kids, I could see how like people on the internet might find that, like if they're pedophiles on the internet and they're looking for stuff, they might get an attraction to it. But I don't think the act of bathing with your child is necessarily creepy on its own, and I don't think that Max thinks that. Like when I was a baby and when I was a toddler, I would, my mom would bathe me, my father would too. And we would take baths together. It was no big deal. But
you wouldn't film it.
Right. No, we wouldn't film and share it on YouTube. Exactly.
You remember when the only way your parents could embarrass you was to yell out across the parking lot, did you put on clean underwear when you were going into the school or something stupid like that? And now, or show your baby pictures to your your date or stuff like that. Now they can put stupid shit on the internet that will never go away.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is the stuff that YouTube does not control. There are people that are getting demonetized, put in limited state. Like, that was that one short story that I read in the news in brief where some, I don't know if it was like, what's it called, Right Wing Watch or something like that, and it made a video about Reuben Report, Sticks and Hammer, Roaming Millennial and Sargon. It was like just like this really spurious, group of people that they have like a tiny bit in common, but they're not really the same. And that one got put in limited state. I guess they were debunking something of theirs or whatever. That gets put in limited state, but these weird, creepy, like, introduce kids to sexual toys videos. No, those are fine. We'll actually, let's put that on the front page. Let's make those trending videos. They actually make some of those videos trending when they're not actually trending. Like, they haven't gotten a lot of views and not a lot of people are watching them, but they promote them anyway. That's weird shit to me. I don't know if it's just a bad algorithm or people making bad decisions or what, but it certainly is worthy of being called weird, because that's what it is.
Well, it certainly is people making bad decisions. For the record, I want to say there's nothing wrong with bathing with your kids. I mean, like at a certain age, it becomes wrong. But I think I just got it wrong with what the videos are actually containing. The Observing Libertarian actually got it correct.
Oh, okay, that's what I figured, because he's good about that. I'm not, So I mean, because he's got like this fucking photographic memory.
You're the man.
He gives us $5 and says, so another super chat from Observing Libertarian. The big to-do over it was the sexualized poses and the comment sections, which exposed the fact that these were softcore pedo porn on YouTube.
It just keeps getting worse.
Yeah, that's just... I mean, it is a little bit off topic because we were talking about public-funded sites, but it does show where YouTube's priorities are. So, guys, before you go out and decide that you're going to start looking closely at publicly funded YouTube videos that are just talking about news and events, or maybe they are genuinely trying to spread propaganda and lies and undermine democracies, you probably want to like handle the easy stuff, like, pedophilia. It's just like, clean your room, handle the chaos in your space before you start moving out and trying to like take on the tougher stuff, because it's going to be a lot easier to identify shit like this, I think.
But I'm going to go back to repeating, this isn't something that they were not alerted to. This is something that bigger YouTubers have all come out and said. They complained about this. They saw this happening. They drew YouTube staff's attention to it, and nothing was done. So it's not just a lack of cleaning their room. This is like going into a store and finding out, that in addition to all the other products, they've got heroin on a shelf in the back of the store. And you go up to the register, guys, that's heroin back there. Oh, okay. And for 10 years, hey, you realize that's heroin you got on the shelf back there. Oh, okay, thanks for telling us.
We're going to get rid of all these saturated fats.
Right, and then somebody does a news report. This store is selling heroin on one of the back shelves. And then all of a sudden they remove it. It's not that they didn't know it was there. It's that they didn't care, or that they protected it. That's a totally different situation.
Yeah, no, this is beyond stupidity or ignorance. This is like you said, it's just like negligence. So I guess we're wrapping up at this point. I got all the stories done and the other thing in about an hour and 45 minutes. I'm proud because it's been a while since I've been here, so I think I did all right considering the quantity and the amount of time that it's been since I've been on the show. So it's good stuff. We're going to go ahead and get into the after show. I'm going to show you guys what it is. So, oh shit, what happened to my website? Okay. This is an article on a website called Bold. I've never heard of it. Sounds like it's just something for women, though. I don't know. And it's entitled, "I've gotten blown off by men so much lately that I'm literally questioning everything." From the sub, it's like there's like a sub section of the website called "Single as Fuck" or "Single AF." So yeah, and this looks like it's for women because some of the other categories on this website are real advice, is he worth it, almost relationships, and when you just can't anymore. Somehow I don't really picture a lot of men going to these spaces and saying, I wonder if he's worth it. So this is about a woman that's been rejected and blown off by men so much that she's like starting to realize that something is wrong in the world. So I'm wondering, is she woke or broke? And we'll go through it in the after show to find out. If you guys want to be a participant in the after show, you know what to do. You got to become a patron. So go to www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio and we'll go through this article and read it and discuss it and laugh because it's fucking for the lulz. And that's what we do this for. At least that's what I try to get out of it if I can. So yeah, join us on that and we'll have a good time. We'll have a good time laughing at this stuff. Until then. That's basically how it is in the after show. So you guys know. But we're going to go ahead and take off and go do that. And I want to thank my panelists for coming on with me and joining us on today's HBR News Show. And I want to thank you guys for joining us and watching. I want to make sure that I don't miss any super chats. Oh, Observing Libertarian gave us $5 and say, Stefan and I both did videos on this topic. Sent it to your Skype, Brian. Well, thank you. So there, I almost missed that one, but I didn't. All right, well, with that, we're going to take off. And we will see you on the next HBR News.